Week 6 was the same story for the Seahawks this season, as yet again they blow another fourth quarter lead to Carolina, this time a 9-point fourth quarter lead after just blowing a 17-point quarter lead last week to the Bengals to keep them undefeated. The Seahawks now turn around and blow a 9-point lead to the Panthers to allow them to stay undefeated. And just like that, Seattle is 2-4 through 6 games. And the playoffs? That's a real question mark now. Welcome back to the Best Damn Sports Blog. Back again to talk NFL with you guys, specifically the Carolina and Seattle Seahawks game that took place because Seattle was yet in another great game and they blew another fourth quarter lead yet again. The Seattle Seahawks, two-time defending NFC champions, are now 2-4. But before I get to them, I just got to tip my hat to Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers. They showed that they are a legit 5-0 with their comeback win in Seattle, and this marks Seattle's first home loss since Week 6 of last year to the Dallas Cowboys. Winning in Seattle is a major feat, regardless of how poor Seattle has looked this season. Cam Newton had a big-time game, though, as well as for the second straight week, a tight end. This time it was Greg Olsen. Last week it was Tyler Eifert, but Greg Olsen cooked them for 7 receptions, 131 yards, 1 touchdown, the game-winning touchdown. Cam Newton made a big-time throw to Greg Olsen when they could have settled for the field goal and gone to overtime. Cam Newton found Greg Olsen wide open in the back of the end zone, and it was murder she wrote, and that was the game. Cam Newton also had a big day. 20 of 36 passing for 269 yards, 1 touchdown. Did have the 2 interceptions, but he still led Carolina to victory, and also on an 80-yard drive and 90-yard drive to win the game. Down the stretch in the fourth quarter to overcome a 9-point deficit. So in my mind, Carolina is legit. We know last year their defense took a step back, but to me this year they look like they're back. The offense, despite having no receivers, Cam Newton has found out that he can target Greg Olsen and reap results from it. I like this Panthers team a lot. The NFC South is somewhat of a weak division. We don't know how legit Atlanta is. We saw them fall to New Orleans on Thursday, and I'm not sure they're on the same level as this Carolina team. Carolina's defense looks to be a lot better, but they do have 2 head-to-head matchups that might decide this division. But man, Cam Newton and the Panthers showed me something coming back from 9 points in the fourth quarter against that team. So for that fact, I think they're legit. They have a shot to make it to the NFC Championship game. But I want to get back to those Seahawks who are now 2-4 on the season. They're 2 games back of Arizona in the NFC West, and they are tied for last place with San Francisco with their 2-4 record. And when you think about it, their 2 wins. One came against Jimmy Clausen and the Chicago Bears. The other was a controversial win over Detroit. So Seattle very well could be 1-5 with their 1 win coming against Jimmy Clausen. Seattle blew 4 quarter leads in all 4 of their losses so far this season. They blew a lead of 7 points in the fourth quarter, of 1 point, of 17 last week, and now against the Panthers, 9. And what's alarming to me is all 4 of those losses have come against good teams. You got the Rams, who is an in-divisional opponent, so that's going to be a tight matchup regardless. I wouldn't consider them good. But then they lost to the Packers, they lost to the Bengals, and now the Panthers. And what's ironic that I noticed about all 3 of those teams being the Bengals, Panthers, and Packers, they're all undefeated. So against the best competition in the NFL, Seattle has had leads, but have failed to hold on to them. So when I hear that, I scratch my head and I wonder, are they just inferior? Or are they still as good as they were? They're just not getting the breaks. And I got to be honest, I think they're a little inferior to what we've seen them be the past 2 seasons. This offensive line is no good. Russ Wilson isn't playing terrible, but he's not playing out of this world, and they need him to be at a great level. Jimmy Graham, they finally got him involved against Carolina, but he's pretty much been untargeted enough prior to that game against Carolina. And then their defense, they're giving up points and they're giving up big passing days, and tight ends seem to be cooking against their secondary. I don't know about the Legion of Boom anymore. Kerry Williams is not worthy of that title to join the Legion of Boom. And outside of him, the other three have not been great either. They've been good. They've had their moments. They had their moments of greatness. But as a collective, they have not been great this season, in my estimation. And when I look at how far behind the 8 ball they are now, they're 2 games back of Arizona. They're also trailing in the wild card. I'm thinking, is this team a playoff team? Their one win, legit win I should say, came against Jimmy Clausen. They very well could have lost that game to Detroit with the controversial call against Calvin Johnson that went the other way, when it could have went maybe Detroit's way. And I got to say, I'll come to the conclusion that Seattle is an 8-8 team. And that's not going to get them in the playoffs. I think Arizona, I may have overestimated them a bit, but I still think they'll get to 9 wins, most likely 10. And at this point, already with 4 losses, meaning they have to go 8-2 the rest of the way, I just don't see Seattle being able to get to 10 wins. And I think you're going to need at least 10 wins because Atlanta's 4-1 as well. And I think they're going to be able to hold down a wild card spot. The second wild card spot, you do have Minnesota, who's 3-2. I believe they hold that spot as of now, but I don't think Seattle's making it. This team just doesn't have it this year. Like I said, Russ Wilson isn't great. Marshawn Lynch has been banged up. He's not getting a lot of yards anymore. He hasn't cracked the 100-yard barrier yet. Jimmy Graham has finally come on in week 6. But now they're already behind the 8 ball. And for that reason, I don't think they'll ever get back above the 8 ball. And for that, Seattle will not be in the playoffs.